Hello, Film Independent members. Welcome to this Film Independent Presents Q&A for the new RLJE Films movie, No Man of God, directed by Amber Sealey, who happens to be one of my favorite people in the universe. I'm Jenn Wilson, Senior Programmer with Film Independent. Thanks so much to our sponsor, Vision Media, who helps us host all of our virtual screenings for this series. Now, please welcome today's guests from No Man of God, director Amber Sealey, actor and producer Elijah Wood, and actor Luke Kirby. Welcome, everybody.
You think you're smarter than him. You think you're going to be the one that's going to get him to confess.
Well, I don't think I'm smarter, sir. I don't think you necessarily have to be smarter. It is February 13th, 1986. This is Agent Bill Hagmeyer. I'm sitting with Theodore.
No, Ted.
I'm sitting with Ted Bundy.
Ted Bundy has 13 hours to live, and he is using those hours to try and buy himself more time.
When you get too close to a guy like this, you could lose your way. Do you think you could kill somebody?
I'm an FBI agent.
That's not what I'm saying. I need a moment with Bill. He's my best friend.
As Amber knows, I guess I'll call myself a crime super fan, although I feel guilty about saying that. I watch everything crime related, absolutely everything, every show, every podcast. Just recently, last week, watched another Ted Bundy thing. It's really hard to say something new about Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
And but I feel like this film actually does. So congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
I want to talk first. We usually start with a question because we have so many members at Film Independent that are aspiring filmmakers. Mm-hmm. We usually start first with an origin story question about how did you get into the film industry. So let's start with Amber. What's your origin story of how you became a director?
Well, it was a pretty organic transition from being an actor. You know, when I was a kid, acting was the first thing I did that I was good at. I was a pretty average kid, and suddenly I did this thing, and then I had grown-ups telling me, like, you're good at this. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to keep doing this because people tell me I'm good at it. And so, you know, I didn't have any models of like female directors. I don't know that I thought that women couldn't be directors, but I just didn't see it being done. You know, all the famous directors that I knew of were all men. So for a long time, I just was like, oh, I'm an actor. And then I started doing a lot of performance art alongside of video art. And then I just found myself getting more and more interested in the video part of it. And then the Dogma film movement was going on in Europe in my early 20s. And that was where I just got really, influenced by that. And I was like, hey, I can make a movie just with my friends, DIY style. And so I did that. And then I just fell in love with the whole process. And so then my directing just started getting more important than my acting, and then my acting fell away. And now I call myself a filmmaker because I feel like that covers both my writing and my directing and a little bit of my, origins as an actor.
Thank you. Elijah, what's your origin story? Do you have a story as an actor and a producer? How did you become an actor, and then how did you become a producer?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll try and make this brief. I became an actor when I was quite young. Started out in commercials. It sort of occurred to my mom when I was 5. She saw a commercial on TV and she thought that'll be fun for Elijah to do. He has a lot of energy. We lived in Iowa. There wasn't really an outlet for it. To make a long story short, we ended up getting out to Los Angeles to sort of audition during pilot season. And I auditioned for a number of commercials. My first job was a Paula Abdul music video for Forever Your Girl. Funnily enough, directed by David Fincher before he started making movies. And then I did a number of commercials, and then I had a small role in a film, and it just sort of, I fell in love with it instantly. I think initially I was so young, the sophistication of it was outside of my realm of understanding beyond sort of playing make-believe. But I loved being around people, and I loved the creative process. There was something about it that I connected with very quickly. And the older I got, the more passionate I became about it. And so grateful to continue to be working today. And then as far as producing is concerned, it was something that I'd been wanting to do for a while, just to be involved in the making of something from its infancy, to guide that process along, and to create a space for filmmakers to make the kinds of movies that they wanted to make freely without any hindrance to their creative process. And so I met my producing partners a number of years ago, and we sort of bonded on a shared love of genre and horror films. And that's sort of how SpectreVision was born. And our first movie was A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, on Amir Pour's Iranian vampire film. And we were sort of off to the races. And yeah, it purely came out of, I think, after acting for over 20 years, just loving everything about that process and just simply wanting to be involved in a deeper, earlier stage of the process.
Awesome. What a great movie to start with. Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. You can't go wrong with that one. That's one of the best indies of the last 10 years.
Oh, it's so wonderful. She's incredible.
Luke Kirby, what's your origin story?
I have to ask my mother and father. But it happened. I grew up in a town that had a movie theater close enough to my house that I could walk home from seeing movies, and those walks were really those walks home were always so exciting because you could sort of pick who you wanted to be from the movie and play it out over the course of that half hour, or draw it out longer. My biggest frustration was that most of the friends that I would walk home with weren't as interested in committing to the make-believe as I was. And so when I sort of started to explore the idea of being an actor, which was such a fantasy and such a faraway possibility, I got to meet people who were just as dedicated to staying in the realm of make-believe. And so I sort of just felt like, the otherwise dark world had sort of had a light on it. And I met these people that were just as dedicated to play. And I saw that there was like a potential for a life in that. And at the time, it looked like, the only way where I was, it looked like the only way to do that would be through theater, because things weren't as accessible at the time. The medium seemed like a very far away, hard to reach thing. It wasn't as sort of, we didn't all have cameras on phones and whatever strange realm we're in now. But so I did a lot of theater. I just started exploring that. And then one day Amber Sealey emailed me, and now I'm an actor.
I'm going to take all the credit for your oh my.
So there are so very many things that I want to ask that we don't have time for, but this film focuses, very much on the performances, on these two main characters of Bill Hagmaier and Ted Bundy, the dark and the light, if you will. Amber, did you and Elijah get to talk to the real Bill Hagmaier? I'm wondering what kinds of things he told you about talking to Ted Bundy that helped making this film.
Yeah, we all got to talk to him. Bill is an executive producer on the film, and he originally talked to the writer, and then once we started, being in development and production, then we all talked to him, and he was a really great resource. I mean, he's become a friend. When he made himself completely available, I would send him these, I'm a big fan of a long email. I would send him a long list of questions that, range from what did it feel like, when you heard, X, Y, or Z horrible thing? And also, what color were your shoes and your belt? And, we were literally sending him photos like, can you send me a picture of your teeth? And he took it all in stride, and he's such a lovely guy, and he was just a really great resource, because it was really important to me that there be an authenticity to this. I think especially because the story's been told so many times, not this particular, but there's been so many Bundy films. I really wanted it to be very authentic. And that's important to me in any period piece. So yeah, he was totally available, and he still is. I mean, he sent me these photos of Bundy that he sent me that are from I like showing these, that kind of iconic time. But these are actual photos of the prison and stuff of them. It's a little weird for me to have them, but they're,
I don't know why, but every photo of Ted Bundy is chilling, even if he's just sitting there doing regular person things.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Somehow.
I keep them hidden in even I was like, I don't want my kids to come across these. And then I mean, there's nothing gory in them, but
No, they're innocuous,
like,
but there is
I
something
feel
creepy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you should hide them from your kids, because my initiation into this was that my parents had Helter Skelter on their bookshelf when I was a little kid.
Oh, right.
And I used to look at all the pictures of all the Manson family members and be totally fascinated with it. So
I don't remember where I got it, but I still have it. It may have been a used bookstore, but I have a Time Life serial killers book. Do you know that one? Seen it? Oh, yeah, and Ted's on the cover, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had those.
Yeah.
I had the timeline. I wish I hadn't gotten rid of them, because I think they're pretty unique now. I don't think there's many out there.
No. And when we were preparing for the film, I found my copy in the house. Like, holy shit, I've had this since I was 15, 14, something like that. I'm like you, my sort of interest in this kind of world extends pretty far back. And still, I mean, I still kind of devour true crime. It is interesting how it's an interesting facet of the human sort of curiosity to want to peer into that darkness and look at it and understand it. And I think a lot of it comes from that place of wanting to understand, because we can't comprehend how someone could do those things. So it's fascinating to look at someone psychologically, to try and understand why they would do that.
Right.
Ted being, I think, one of the more fascinating ones, just simply because he was able to so successfully seemingly lead a double life,
Right. And the show that I was watching, that was partly about Ted Bundy last week. It had a lot of footage from his earlier time period of interviews, being arrested, jail escape, rearrested.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering because this film focuses on the last 4 years of his life. I'm wondering what you feel like are the differences between that Ted and the Ted that's in this movie.
Who wants to take that?
I mean, my feeling of sort of looking at it is like, I see in the sort of earlier stuff, there's a kind of, there's a bit more of a swagger to him, like almost as though he was kind of into playing the game of like an outlaw.
Yeah.
And in the time that after he's, finally cornered and sentenced, in the later interviews, he sort of just looks like an ashtray, sort of just scrambling for a pulse, but the whole time he's just impossibly desperate to, evade the truth,
mm-hmm.
which is just, so bizarre. But I guess it's how men can be.
For you, Luke, and this performance is absolutely astounding. When I first saw this, I had goosebumps all over, because I've watched so much footage of the real Ted Bundy. Can you talk about how you approached playing him, and then Amber, talk about how you tried to help Luke get to some of these places?
Yeah, I mean, I approached it, I tried at first to not approach it. I approached it very reluctantly, and then I met Amber, and we hashed out our concerns, and just the sort of the icky feeling that comes with exploring such ugliness, and the potential for exploit, which is always there. It's something that we are all kind of participating in, whether we like it or not. And so just sort of how to, remedy that as best as we could to do the best work we could do without sort of feeling paralyzed by those fears. And, the approach was just sort of trying to explore this person, as thoroughly as one can and can stomach. And so that's, it was just sort of I would go away to a little room every day and just sit and stew in it, and then sort of, come outside and jump in a pool and scream at the bottom of it for a little while. And then I think, the real thing in terms of the playing of it, once we were on set, was, we just were granted this great space that Amber provided to really try things in a way that we weren't sort of locked into any one idea about who these men are or what exactly it is that they were doing. We were sort of granted a lot of space to explore, that I attribute to, Amber's brilliance, and also the fact that we were in one room that sort of provided us a kind of a flexibility with time to explore things that way. So it really, as I remember it, it kind of felt like we were just sort of mucking about, throwing whatever we could pick up and, flinging it at the wall and seeing what it looked like and if it stuck. And, we just had to entrust Amber to kind of assure us that it was there. And I mean, it felt very sort of seamless in the space of doing it,
What's crazy about Ted Bundy is he feels like a performance. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you never know if any of the footage that I saw of him, I saw the real Ted Bundy,
Right.
Or if that exists, or because he always just seemed to adopt whatever persona he needed to have.
It's very difficult to know if anything, everything seems like facsimile, but it's really, or a Xerox or a blueprint. It's just so close to something true, but there's just a kind of a weird sort of like shaky aspect to the thing that you're looking at that just sort of is a tiny bit skewed.
Yeah.
And so you can never feel reassured that anything that he's sort of saying is truthful or coming from any, what we sort of normally think of as people interacting.
For you, Amber, Luke was talking about, creating an environment where actors can do this. For you, what's that about? How do you do that?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, because you guys made me think of this. To me, I did see a through line in Ted, even early Ted and later Ted. And that was always, the fact of his performing in different ways, and, here trying to be sensitive, and then here trying to be intense and harsh, and here trying to be really, really intellectual. To me, the through line in all of that was that he was always desperate to impress. When someone is constantly changing their personality, no matter, depending on who the audience is, that to me says like, oh, they are trying to always get something, and they're trying to always get, with Ted, it was like attention and accolades and, always trying to impress people. And that to me spoke of a deep, river of narcissism and insecurity that ran through him. So to me, that was really the through line. And, when I see someone who's always performing and changing, depending on the audience, that's kind of, maybe it's because I can relate to that. I understand that, that kind of insecurity, but anyway. What was your question? I forgot about, the characters. I think we all, or maybe not, maybe I'm just speaking about Luke and I, but, neither one of us, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, but felt a real obligation to Bundy at all to sort of, go, well, I hope he likes this performance. Not only is he dead, but he's also a total jerk. So, we didn't have the kind of, we didn't have to sort of honor anything about him. To me, it was really about getting to the core granular, like, who is he? and what is this relationship between the two men about, and how is that evolving? And as you say, they're both performing for each other. There's a real mental swordplay that goes on between the two of them. And these moments of truth and real connection seep out despite, maybe what either one of them really wants. So, it was about kind of finding not only the truth of who they are, but the truth of that relationship, because it was an important relationship for both of them. I mean, they both said, Ted tried to will all of his earthly belongings to Bill when he died. Bill actually refused and said he didn't want them. And so they ended up going to a lawyer. But Bill was very important to Ted. And Bill himself has told me, yes, I was friends with him. There was a kind of love and friendship there. So it was an important relationship for both of them. Now with Bill, I did feel a sense of responsibility. He's not only alive, but he's a really good person and a sweet guy, and had been, so helpful to me in terms of and to all of us in terms of the making of the film. So, and I wanted that like kind of essential goodness to come through, while at the same time placing this other layer on top, which is kind of asking the bigger questions that I think are more universal, which are like, what does it mean to sit so close to evil? Does that evil have an effect on you? Is being good and evil a choice? Does God exist? What does it mean to believe in God? Yeah. Right. So there's I wanted to represent the real Bill. And then I also wanted to ask larger questions that were more kind of my own personal questions. Yeah, I don't know if
that's what I liked about this movie so much, was that so many projects don't really try to go into the why of things, because that's what's the hardest to understand. And interrogating that, even trying to interrogate it, I feel like brought out so many. It even made someone like Ted Bundy seem layered. Which I think is hard to do, because we feel like someone like Ted has nothing in them, and that's why they can do what they do. For Elijah, how did you think about this relationship between Bill and Ted? It's funny that it's Bill and Ted.
We thought about calling it Bill and Ted's excellent. What did we say? We were going to call it Bill and Ted's excellent interrogation.
Did you view it as sort of like starting out as transactional and then becoming something deeper?
I don't know that yes. I mean, I don't know that it was entirely ever fully transactional. I think it was pure in that, what Bill says about wanting to understand, I think is true, despite the fact that I think he's also there to get answers for families. So in that sense, I suppose there is a transaction. But the purity of it is complex. I mean, I think even Bill would have a difficult time answering that question. But I think if I'm to interpret my interpretation is that Bill had a genuine connection with another human being that happened to be Ted Bundy. They did genuinely connect on certain levels, both being fathers, just the human experience. And I think that does happen regardless of your judgment or your feelings about another person and what they have or haven't done. If you're in a room with someone for a long enough period of time and you have the ability to sort of, not judge and just sort of be there, you will find common ground. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to walk out of that room considering that person someone you care about or that you would be friends with. But I think that there is an exchange, from human to human. And I think that did happen. I think that has happened throughout Bill's career with a lot of people who have done really heinous things, because it's not, the conversation's not always about those heinous things. It's also just about the human experience and why one does what they do and how they came to be who they are. And everybody can relate on some level to some of those things. So it's a long answer, but I think it's a complicated one. And but I do think that there were probably conflicts in Bill's mind, walking away from that. You spend X amount of time with someone and they go to be executed. There was an exchange between two people.
For Amber, one of the parts that I really liked was the footage that you put in between the scenes of images what was the basis on which you selected those images that were shown in between the scenes?
Well, it was a couple things, and I don't really remember the exact order that they happened in. I mean, the first thing was, it was really important to me to, I was aware that, 60 or 70% of the movie takes place in this one room, with these just two people. And so I wanted to know, like, what's the sort of pulse of the world outside of that room? Like, what's happening, And I think because they were talking so much about these women's lives who ended, I wanted to sort of see those women in a sense, not necessarily specifically, but I wanted to see, like, what were women's lives like at that time period. So there was that. It was wanting to get out of the room, wanting to have a moment, just for the audience to get like a moment of release and kind of getting out of that space, both kind of literally and figuratively. And then it was also about, to me, this is more Bill's story than it is Ted's story. And it was about finding a way to represent what's going on for Bill, because of this, as Elijah talked about, the kind of human exchange that was happening in the room, the kind of the connections that they were making. What impact was that making on Bill? And so the kind of interstitials or montages, however you want to call them, they are meant to kind of show us the outside world and also show us internally, emotionally, what's happening for Bill. So, it's his questioning his own relationship to women on the street, even in some sense, like sexuality, sexual, power dynamics. I mean, this is all very, very subtle. Like, it's not overt. It's meant to just kind of give you a feeling, a taste, rather than like say anything explicitly about gender dynamics. But, the footage of there's husbands and wives, and there's one where a husband is kind of grabbing his wife and shaking her, and, and that's a little bit, it wasn't actually 80s footage. I think it was 60s or 70s footage, but, it's just meant to evoke thought and commentary about, the really, I'm generalizing here, but the experience that women and men have. Women walk through the world knowing that most men are stronger than them. Most men can overpower them. And even within, that footage I was just talking about, it within that marriage, you can tell the woman doesn't want to be grabbed and shaken like that. And the man is sort of exerting his power over her. And so to me, that was kind of a representation of, Bill is a good guy. He's probably not going home and physically domineering his wife. I'm not trying to say that at all, but I'm trying to say that I hope that this made Bill think about that kind of thing. And I hope it makes all of us think about that kind of thing. So yeah, it was both, it was three things. It was give the audience a break from the room, show them what's going on in the outside world, and then show them also, what's going on internally for Bill in a kind of, what's the word, just a more kind of emotional, maybe experimental kind of way, rather than a literal scene of Bill, with his wife. This was a kind of more fun way to express that in a more creative way, I felt like.
One of the big conversations between Ted and Bill is that Ted ascertains that he is normal. He and Bill are the same person, and Bill's absolutely capable of what Ted has done. I'm wondering, for the three of you, starting with Elijah, do you think that that's really true? That Ted was totally normal? There's nothing abnormal about Ted's brain. There's nothing abnormal about Ted. He just took a different road.
I don't think so. No. I think the central thesis, that idea of, can normal people kill, and his belief that normal people can, and that it's just a choice, the difference between saying yes or no to it, I don't think is accurate. And I don't think that he had a normal functioning brain. I think that's very clear in his narcissism, his constantly playing a role. You just see it. I mean, you see it in those interviews. You don't see a real person. You definitely see an interpretation for whatever it is that he needs at that given time, which is sort of indicative of someone not having a true emotional, vulnerable core. So no, I think he was quite damaged. There's also he maintained that he had a very healthy childhood, and there's a lot of information to the contrary, that may not necessarily have been true. But I don't know that it was a bad childhood that caused this. I do think that I think you have to be damaged internally, and there's a lot of things along the way that shape that, right? Because I think you can be born a psychopath or not have a great sense of emotional connection to other people and not necessarily turn out that way and act on violence. I definitely think that there are triggers and elements along that path that sort of shape you, I believe.
Amber?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Elijah said. I mean, I think he was clearly psychopathic and that there were all sorts of other elements that impacted his behavior. I do think that, though, there's an element that is right about that, which is that we all have good and evil inside of us, and we all can choose to act on the good or act on the evil. I mean, I think a lot about, I'm against the death penalty. And yet if someone did something to one of my children, I would certainly want to murder them. And I would certainly, I'm sure, fantasize about it. The act of then going and doing the literal things that have to happen, buying the gun or whatever, whatever my murder fantasy would be, I think that's probably where it would stop. Like, I don't think I would be able to, but I'm sure at night I would lie in bed and fantasize about killing them. So, and I certainly think that, I have to, and maybe this is just, speaks to my own personality, but I do have to remind myself constantly to come from love, make the choice that is good and positive and bringing love into the world rather than hate or prejudice or and so, and I think that's true for probably a lot. I mean, there are some people that are just completely, it's effortless for them to be good all the time. I don't know any of them, but I'm hoping they exist. But I think for a lot of us, we constantly have to make take a breath and make the choice to be kind, and to, allow space for other people's, foibles. So that part, of like, you and I are the same, is true. But I agree with everything that Elijah said, that they're not really the same. Bill is not a psychopath. And I don't actually think that Bill would murder anyone. When he says, I could, he's saying, like, yeah, had I had all those same circumstances as you and maybe the same brain, chemistry as you, I could. And he's saying, literally, if someone broke into my house and was about to murder me, my wife, I could kill him, but would he? No, I don't think he would. I think there are many more differences between the two of them than Bundy would like to believe. But I think what is so special about Bill is that he saw that his job was to let Bundy believe that they were more similar, so that he would then open up and give Bill what Bill wanted, which was answers about what did he do to these girls, so that he could, bring peace to the families. So, yeah.
Luke, did you come to any conclusions about whether you think Ted was right about having a normal brain?
Not especially. I mean, I wonder about it. I think that there's got to be value to asking the question of, how close are we all, to turning the corner? Like, is that kind of violence and ugliness looming? Like, what's the proximity? What's the bridge? Is the bridge shorter than we admit, or is it,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's worth, I just think I don't feel like they're anywhere near the same person in that regard. But I kind of feel like it's incumbent upon everyone to explore their own, inner life, to be aware of any bells that need to be rung, in case that's getting closer to your door than you know. Yeah, but no, I don't think that there's a special, I don't think anything that he's saying everything he's saying is clearly in the service of himself and his weird obsession with optics and survival,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's my time. Amber, you can send me an email with your murder fantasy in it later on. I'm really interested in that. All of you can actually, if you have a murder fantasy.
Will you act it out for us?
Sure. I'll do a one-woman show.
Great.
It's called Amber's Murder Fantasy.
Gosh, just me. I'm the only
Sketches
one.
of murder.
It really says a lot that both Luke and Elijah, they're like, I don't have those fantasies.
No.
I'm not saying I have them. I'm saying
No.
if-
I think everyone has thought that at one stage, and it oftentimes it's like you're saying, Amber. It's in relation to your kids, or it's someone breaking into your home. What would you do? We all walk ourselves through that process, for sure. Although I don't know, mine never end in murder. Mine's always like maiming someone. It's always like
you
taking
just want, like,
someone,
a souvenir. Their
or
hand.
just trying to avoid murder at all costs, I guess. I don't know.
Maiming the part of their body that they most love so that they have to live with like a scarred
Rabbit style.
feature.
Bobbit? What is her name?
All right, now we're going down a rabbit hole. Thanks to everybody. This movie
Go
is
down a bobbit
incredible.
hole.
A bobbit hole. Oh my God. Perfect way to end.